So let me begin by asking you to pause and to think with me. I want you to ask yourself, what are you afraid of? What in life are you afraid of? At this very moment in time, perhaps, maybe generally, but what are you afraid of? What comes immediately to mind? Speed, going fast, spiders, things that crawl, sickness, snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes? Stillness. Are you frightened of being alone? You know, some people, that's the scariest thing of all, being alone. They're the ones in classes where when you ask a question and nobody responds, they just can't stand it. They have to say something because the quiet and the stillness just makes them at ease. Would you be afraid of things that were too high, too low, too dark, too small, too daring, too death-defying? Would you be afraid of skydiving, skin diving, scuba diving, cave diving, halo diving? Remember that guy a few months ago who took that balloon up? He was sponsored by Red Bull. I don't even think if Red Bull sponsored me, I could do that. He took that balloon up to the stratosphere. They showed the picture, and he leaned out. Would that scare you? Would any of these things make the hair rise on your neck or kind of a twist, a knot begin to form in your stomach? What are you afraid of? And don't play games with me. Even Superman had kryptonite. Even Superman had kryptonite. And it's an important question to ask. It's an important question to ask yourself. It's an important question to ask yourself on Easter, because that's the question that all these Easter texts ask us. I mean, we tend to come here, and people, I look around, I see all the bright colors. Pink and purple and light blue and all those things. We tend to focus on that. We like the sunrise. There's that joy and that celebration and the trumpets playing and people singing with great enthusiasm. We like that part. But lest we forget or lest we circumvent it, Easter doesn't get there right away. Easter hinges on something else. There's a more poignant point to all of this that you cannot circumvent or avoid. The power of the Easter story is something you can't ignore, because the power of the Easter story involves the darkness of the grave and the doorway of death. Because life, death, life is really what Easter is talking about. It's really what this occasion is about. That end of our life experience, that death experience that nobody gets around. It may come to us at different times, in different ways, in different places, but it comes to all of us. There is a beginning and there is an end, as the book of Ecclesiastes says. And people, maybe you may kid yourself and say it has no power, it has no sway over you, but I dare to say that the only people who really truly think that way are probably 17, 18, and 19. And I'm not sure if they're not afraid or they're just stupid. You know, there is a fine line between those two things. But as the old saying goes, everybody wants a piece of heaven, nobody wants to die to get there. Why? Because what I'm talking about, this death thing, this grave thing, it represents the unknown. It represents the unfathomable, the incomprehensible, that which we cannot touch, turn, toggle, or control. And we don't like that. We like to know, or we like to think we know, or we like to trick ourselves into telling people we know. We like to be in control. We like to manage. And anything we can't manage, we're very easily discard or put aside or poo-hoo. Because we would rather know than not. Why, even the greatest of daredevils, think about this, even the greatest of daredevils always have an escape hatch or an emergency route, don't they? And so we think they're courageous and we think they're bold, but the magician has the trick. He knows how it works. Nobody jumps out of a plane without a parachute. Is that right? Nobody jumps out of a plane without a parachute, and if the first chute doesn't open, they got a backup. They're only in trouble when they don't have a backup. So even the greatest of daredevils that we hold have a plan to try to preserve themselves, maintain some control. But with death, truly, there is none. Death is the Terra Incognita. Death is the Terra Incognita, the land unknown, the territory unknown. And the name comes from, back in the Middle Ages, the name comes from that period when people believed the earth was flat, that if you sailed too far, you would fall over, that sea monsters would get you, or you would crash into the abyss. And so the ancient maps of that time, the north, south, east, or west, on the edge of them, they all had written Terra Incognita. It's the place you don't go because you don't know. You don't know what is there. And it only changed. It only went away when there were some people who dared, some risk takers who believed that there was something out there. And what those individuals brought to the world, they brought to life, they brought to generations to come, was not simply new discoveries or new lands. They brought to the people around them and to the people who would follow them, they brought to us a new future. Because of them, the unknown was not unknown anymore. And friends, that's what the message of Easter says to us. That's what the resurrected Christ should tell us. Because as the book of Hebrews says, He is the author and perfecter of the faith. He is the pioneer. He is the firstborn of the new fruits, the new life, the new creation. He has gone into the Terra Incognita. And because He has gone there, we need not be afraid of that either. You see, faith at its deepest level, is not about what's tangible or intangible. It's not about what's logical or illogical. Faith is about what's theological. You get that? It's not about what's logical or illogical. It's theological, which means when you talk about life and your life and what you face and what's coming down the road, it's not just about what you can see or know, because theology or theological says you're bringing God into it. You're bringing God into the mix. And God, with God, all things, the Scriptures say, all things are possible. Not just all things we know or all things we can understand. If that were the case, we would still be in the dark ages. But all things, even those we don't know and can't understand yet. You see, the Gospel writers tell us that the first witnesses to the resurrection arrived at the tomb how? In fear. They were afraid. They were afraid of what could happen to them. They were afraid of what maybe other people would think. They were afraid that someone might take their life as well. And so they stopped on the precipice because of their uncertainty. They stopped because they were afraid. But when they took that step over the edge, when they dared to go in, they changed the moment they stepped into, in faith, the Terra Incognita. That uncertainty of the known, where they discovered, what they discovered in there was not the power, their power or their resources. What they discovered in there was God's power and God's resources. What they learned there was that the future and their fate and their destiny did not depend on themselves or even what other people or life would do to them, that ultimately those people don't have power over us, only God does. That ultimately God can take our skills and God can use our skills. God can empower us, and when that happens, we change. You know, people wonder all the time when we deal with skeptics or people who struggle with belief. They always say, well, show me a body. There was no body. Show me some painting. Show me some photo. There's got to be a YouTube somewhere of this event. Right? That's the age we live in. And yet the greatest proof of a resurrection is not that there was a body to be displayed or a photograph that we can hang on the wall and worship in some form of idolatry, I suspect. The greatest proof of this is that these fearful disciples changed. that whatever occurred on that day took cowards and made courageous individuals. Whatever happened on that day took people who went and ran in hiding and empowered them to speak boldly, even to the day of their own death and demise. And they did so in their preaching, saying, it's not because of anything that's in me, anything in me except the risen Christ. And that experience made all the difference in the world. Friends, the story of Easter, or the power of the day we celebrate here, what I want you to take hold of, this message is not merely about a story of one individual or a story of a resurrection for all individuals at the end of life. This is really a story about finding power and being empowered, finding life and resurrection in life now. Realizing that the worst life can throw at you, the worst life can do to you, has no ultimate power over you. It cannot define you. It cannot unless you let it. That nothing, as Paul says, neither in heaven or on earth, neither what happens today nor tomorrow, ultimately can dominate you if this risen Christ lives within you. That if death holds no fear, do you get that? If death holds no fear, if the worst that can happen holds no fear, then nothing else, everything else is peanuts. You can do it. You can rise above it. That's what this text says. Which doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that this faith thing we talk about removes personal, social, economic, or health issues. It doesn't take those away. People who believe still face those. It doesn't mean that the challenges of being in relationships or the hurdles of daily living will dissolve. What it does mean is that none of these things need crush, destroy, or define you. That the resurrection power says there is always life after. Life after whatever. If we face it in faith. Not faith in ourselves, not faith in those around us, although that is a part of it, but faith in the God who would dwell in us. In us. It was Abraham Lincoln. Everybody knows Abraham Lincoln, right? So we're on track here. Right? Yeah, okay. It was Abraham Lincoln, arguably, admittedly, by many to be one of the greatest presidents of this country, who served his term during one of the most tumultuous times in this country. And we know how Lincoln's life ended, by an assassin's bullet. But what we may not all be aware of is that was not the single and only time that there were plans and attempts to kill Lincoln's life. Even from the day he left Springfield, Illinois, to travel to D.C. or to the Philadelphia area to be inaugurated, there were plans to destroy the train and to attack the Senate and the Congress at that time. That it was not the only time someone tried to kill him. There were many, many plans. In fact, he would ride his horse. You may know this. He would ride a horse by himself from D.C. to his home in the country all by himself. And one time a bullet was shot at him and hit his hat, but didn't kill him. It was Lincoln, this great individual, who said, "If I am killed, I can die but once. But to live constantly in fear of dying is to die again and again, over and over and over." Do you see? If you let that dominate you, if you let those fears rule over you, you will not live. You will just die again and again and again. And Easter says to us, don't live that way. You can be more. You are called to be more. God made you to be more. You are one to be with the angels. Live. Easter reminds us of that we can stand up and we can stand out. Easter reminds us of that. For as Jesus told his disciples, so he says to us, be not afraid. Be not afraid, not because life isn't going to be tough. Be not afraid, not because life isn't going to throw challenges at you. You're not going to have sickness. You may have economic struggles. Those aren't the things that are going to knock you down. Be not afraid because I tell you they will not crush you. Be not afraid because I tell you I have overcome the worst that life can do to you. I have overcome it. Be not afraid of the future. Be not afraid of the Terra Incognita, the unknown territory in your future. Instead, dare to live the Easter message. Dare to live boldly. Dare to serve faithfully. Dare to step into this day and this message and believe. Step into this Easter message of promise. And don't just merely believe. Choose to live. Live. Amen. At this time, we will continue.